Our future is in growing, and being soul focused is how we grow. Hey, welcome to Soul Focus Radio. I'm your co-host, Mahdi, and I'm with my brother, Dustin. What's happening, D?
What's up, bro? What's up? We're going to jump right into our session, fam. So we got a caller from Tony from Richmond, Virginia. And Tony says that white people want you to think that you're crazy when you talk about racism.
Yeah, I mean, you're not crazy. What the deal is that, white folks are really having a hard time accepting the reality that shit has been set up in their favor and that they've been on top because the game has been rigged. So, you think about how difficult it may be for a white person to have to accept that, but in order for a white person to grow, they're going to have to accept that shit. We know that racism is real. We experience it every day. Every day you walk out. When I walk into an elevator, and women start clenching their purses and shit and looking at me sideways, I know that shit is real. And not only that, but I can feel it in my body. I can feel it in my body, in terms of just the reactions that I experience when I walk out into the world. Listen, how the world occurs to a black man is different from how it occurs to a white man. We both are receiving two different sets of messages. He's receiving messages of saying you're welcome, and the messages I'm receiving is that you're not so welcome. That's why we say we got to work twice as hard, got to be twice as smart. All those are indicators that there are barriers that we having to go against, or that we having to actually swim against the current just to stay alive. You know what I'm saying, D?
I do. And this world provides so much confusion as to what racism is. I mean, people are throwing the word around on TV, in the mass media, on social media, but most people aren't clear, and it's designed to make you feel like you're crazy, especially in this era. I mean, even though we're getting back into more overt type of acts of racism, but, by and large, everything is kept kind of behind the curtain, if you will. One of the things, Mahdi, I know we often talk about is how racism is connected to ego. You want to expand on that a little bit?
Well, yeah, there's a definite connection. Matter of fact, I'm under the belief that ego is the root cause of racism. Like, racism and whiteness grew out of this idea of us having an ego. And, this ego is geared toward proving that it's greater than or less than someone else, which is at the root of what whiteness or white supremacy is really out to try to prove, that it's better than black. And then us, jumping into the blackness, we oftentimes try to prove that we're better than white, which at the same time, both attribute to or supports more egoism in the world, right? So we really have to start working to get out of our ego. Because as long as we're in our ego, it can continue to feed racism, whiteness, sexism, and all these things that are based are driven by us trying to prove that we're greater than or less than someone else. When the reality is we're only equal to ourselves. Now we're going to talk about that probably, as we go into this segment, because so many people call in every day and ask us different questions about this stuff. But for Tony, it is important for you to know, man, you are not crazy. None of us are crazy. It's just white people's way of skirting the responsibility that comes with inheriting a house that they received from their ancestors that was built on slavery, built on racism, built on oppression. And the reality is everybody has to give an account for whatever role they played in the development of that, whites and people of color as well.
That's right. And I think the thing I would want to say to Tony is you are definitely not crazy. Those people who are denying that racism is real, they're the ones who are really struggling with insanity. Beyond crazy, they're struggling with insanity. Anything else you want to illuminate on this idea, bro?
Just want to say to Tony, man, stay focused. Don't believe all that motherfucking hype, because, like I said, it's nothing but a distraction. That shit is real. And we got to really start becoming aware of what racism really is, because the reality is most of us don't know what it really is. We think racism is racial prejudice, or just the idea of someone else calling someone else a name that's racially based. And we think that's what racism is. But, man, racism is bigger than that. And it has been around, of course, for a very long time, but how it was constructed here in America is different from how it was constructed anywhere else. In fact, other countries came and studied how we did it here in America and duplicated it, like in South Africa and Germany. So you have apartheid. Apartheid was a replica of what was happening here. So, and most people don't know that because they don't understand the systemic nature of what racism is.
That's right. That's right. And, Tony, one of the ways in which they keep racism in place is having us think it's about individual acts. But if we look at every system that exists in this country, education, criminal justice, poverty, if we look at child infant mortality, we will see that black people especially, but all people of color, are doing worse than white people. And racism is not about intent anymore. It's about impact. And when we look at the impact, the answers are glaring for us.
Right. What you said, you just said something real heavy, because what you said was, basically the idea that a lot of people think that racism was designed to oppress people of color. Like that was the straight off reason why it was created. And it wasn't really created to oppress people of color. It was created to advantage white people. Now, the side effect or the fallout from that is the oppression of people of color. But it was designed to favor and give white people advantage, and more specifically, a small percentage of white people the advantage. Because the masses of white people, the masses of poor white people don't benefit from it that much at all. But they buy into this idea that they are better than black because they're not black. They are better because they're white, even though they don't have a pot of piss in or a window to throw it out of their damn self.
So they get a psychological
about that shit. Yeah, they get to eat the Jim Crow bird. Like Dr. King said, they get to eat the Jim Crow bird, even though they don't have a damn job, even though they're sick, even though they have no money in the bank. They get to eat Jim Crow, the mythical bird, Jim Crow. This idea that they are better than black because they're white. Please, man. These motherfuckers believing that they have something in common with a billionaire like Trump is a pipe dream. That man don't have nothing in common with you, and you don't have nothing in common with him. Your conditions are so similar to the conditions of black and brown people at the bottom, and then you need to wake up, because I'm thinking about this. And we're going to close out on this question, but when I was watching the movie The Titanic, and it blew my mind when I watched these poor white people who are the second class and third class passengers on the ship lock themselves in the bottom of the ship to wait for their death. And I was like, damn, that's how tight racism is. Racism is so insidious. You have people at the bottom believing that their life is worth less because they don't have any money. And then poor white people especially, have bought into this idea that because they don't have no money, that their life is somehow less valuable than white folks that do have money. That is how powerful racism really is.
So in essence, you're telling Tony he is not crazy, and you're telling poor white people you've been played for centuries.
Played hook, look, like Malcolm X said, you've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray. Poor white people have been hoodwinked and bamboozled far more than people of color, because we've always known we was at the bottom. We've always known this shit is real. Is that poor white people are the ones that bought into it, and they have been used like a damn drum.
Well, Brother Tony, thank you for your question, and we want to tell you to stay so focused, bro.
Peace.